Erik, welcome to Point of View. Great to have you here, sir. Obviously, we're talking about Measure 3, legalizing recreational marijuana. You're a proponent of that, so let me ask you kind of a different question. What's the biggest reason why Measure 3 should pass in North Dakota?
Measure 3 should pass.
No,
because,
shouldn't pass.
Shouldn't pass. I'm as a proponent, I don't think there's a reason it shouldn't pass.
There's no reason that this shouldn't pass.
Absolutely not. I think it's time to end the arrests of adults for marijuana in this state. It's time to legalize it. It's time to end the failed experiment of prohibition that's lasted far too many decades.
So let me throw this at you then, because according to one of our assistant state's attorney here in North Dakota, she says that this decriminalizes minor and consumption for all ages. You come across a 16-year-old that's high, it's like, okay, there's nothing we can do here, that's okay.
That's incorrect. Everything for minors is clearly in the initiative that's illegal. It's still going to prohibit sales to minors, possession by minors. This is not a bill that's going to legalize marijuana for children.
But how are you going to regulate that? Because one of the big talking points that there's no regulations in this bill other than maybe the minor piece, but as far as selling it, my understanding is I can grow as much as I want, sell as much as I want, there's no regs on that.
Sure. What Measure 3 is about is simply ending those arrests. It doesn't mean that there won't ultimately be regulations. In terms of adding new things, such as business licenses, regulations of that sort, you just need a simple majority in the state legislature to do so. So should this pass, what we will do immediately is end the arrest and the destruction of lives and families that prohibition is causing, and then the state legislature can decide what the best protocols and regulations are for North Dakota, as we've seen in states like Colorado and others when they, even though they approved them, they still tweaked them and made them better and achieved the best results.
But I guess that's what I'm getting at. When I asked you initially, hey, why shouldn't this pass? And you go, hey, there's no reason not to. I mean, clearly, if you look at some other states, they've had some issues, they say, as far as crime rates going up. There's been some more people out there driving under the influence. I mean, you see those clearly as negative aspects of this, correct?
The actual states would disagree with you. The reports from Washington State, from Oregon, from Colorado State, from the governments show that DUIDs as terms of traffic fatalities are not going up. In fact, highway traffic fatalities in Colorado are at historic lows post-legalization. These crime rates, in fact, in many places they have gone down. And that's partially because some of these businesses are operating where they have to have security guards, cameras, they're bringing extra foot traffic to neighborhoods where people are less likely to commit crimes. I disagree that those are things that are actually happening in Colorado and states that have legalized, and we have government data that says that I am correct.
Well, I think that the vehicle part, they say, hey, this is still out for debate. I mean, there's been a recent study that says, you know what, they say one thing, but also they're saying, hey, much of this could be because you've got better reporting at this point.
Well, it's actually the people that claim an increase are really looking at it wrong because they change how they collect data. Particularly in Colorado and other legalized states. In the beginning, if there was a traffic fatality or an accident, it was up to the individual police officer to determine whether there would be a drug test. Now, there's a drug test no matter what. So we compare it simply to if you go to a pond one day and you take your fishing rod and you catch a fish, and you go home and you're like, it's great, I got one fish. Next day you come with a net and dredge the lake, and you have hundreds of fish. It's not that suddenly there's more fish, it's that your collection is much broader. And that's what's happening with this data. And if you look at the way they've changed post-legalization, that's exactly what accounts for the differing numbers.
So how are you going to test me? Let's say I get pulled over and I'm under the influence of marijuana. Right now, there's really no way to officially test that. So how are you going to determine if I'm under the influence or not?
Well, most studies that look at the best ways to do so find that roadside impairment testing is actually very effective in determining if someone's impaired on marijuana. So what you would do here is simply train law enforcement officials to be sure that they're drug recognition experts and they're able to conduct these roadside tests in a responsible way. We don't want people driving impaired. We think that should be illegal. That's dangerous, whether it's marijuana, whether it's sleep deprivation, pharmaceuticals, alcohol. We want safe roads. So the way to do that the most effectively is to train police officers to recognize the signs, conduct these roadside impairment tests. It's a rather cost-efficient way to do it as well, and we can improve safety on the roads.
One other aspect that people are talking about as far as the way this bill is written is this sort of statement of supremacy, saying, hey, in the event of the existence of any language in the Century Code which conflicts with this measure, if you will, this measure then supersedes any former state century code. Is that an issue?
It will depend on what part do you think would be an issue? What would be impacted that people are concerned about?
I mean, they're suggesting that, hey, would even trump the Constitution in the state.
That seems like a weird interpretation to me. My understanding and reading of the bill, as well as our attorneys and other folks who have looked at it, would disagree. And anything that does present a conflict like that can be changed. Anything that's specifically in this initiative that needs to be changed can be fixed by the legislature. It's 2/3 vote if they need to change something specific, and a simple majority if they want to add things like regulations.
Anything else you want to add, sir?
I think something that is kind of in all this discussion, some of the biggest impacts we see that's very important that legalization has been proven in countless studies to achieve is in regards to the opioid epidemic. The opioid epidemic is ravaging this country and North Dakota. What we see in states that have legalized medical and recreational marijuana, you see drastic reductions in opioid overdoses and opioid prescriptions and ER admissions. And it's not a small incidental amount. Most states have seen as much as 25% reductions in opioid overdoses. So if we can legalize marijuana, stop criminalizing individuals, and save lives, I think that's a good deal for North Dakota.
Let me counter though, because there are studies as well that say, hey, now that you've legalized marijuana in some states, you take that money out of the cartel's hands. They say, okay, you want to play with my money? Now I'm going to flood the United States with heroin.
The cartel that is driving the opioid epidemic is pharmaceutical companies. Most people that are dying of overdoses are using prescription
specifically
opioids.
about Mexican cartels, and I think you would agree we've seen an increase in heroin in the United States and deaths because of that. So they're saying, if you want to play with my money and you guys want to legalize this, and I'm going to flood the zone with heroin.
Well, I would disagree that we've actually seen a large influx of outside heroin because the use statistics have remained pretty consistent over the years in terms of raw heroin. Again, the opioid epidemic is being driven by pharmaceutical opioids, not so much by heroin. And if anything, by legalizing marijuana, you're freeing up law enforcement resources to crack down on dangerous drugs that are being sold like heroin on the streets.
Thank you for being here, man.
Thank you very much.
All right, stay with us. Much more coming up. Obviously, we'd love to know your point of view, what you heard there about possibly legalizing recreational marijuana here in the great state of North Dakota. You can email us, text us, leave us a voicemail. We'll be right back.